This is the Savvy Investor radio show and podcast. For help with your retirement, schedule a 15-minute phone conversation with the team at ProStatus Financial Advisors today. Just call 866-597-1040 and at thesavvyinvestorradio.com.
Welcome back to the Savvy Investor radio show and podcast with the team at ProStatus Financial. My name is Randy Cook. I'm here with Ryan Herbert of ProStatus Financial and talking through some of the issues of retirement. And, you know, Ryan, I think there's an expectation level when people come in to see a financial advisor that you're going to sit down, you're going to talk about investments, you're going to talk about taxes, and in the end, you're going to get this nice bound plan. And it's going to look really beautiful, and you're going to walk out the door, and you're going to say to yourself, gee, I hope this works. Well, there's a study out there and a talk to financial advisors. Apparently, when you walk out the door and say, gee, I hope this works, apparently there's some financial advisors that are saying the same thing. Gee, I hope this works. In this particular survey, only half of the advisors believe that their clients are financially ready for retirement, and only 11% believe they're emotionally ready for retirement. So we talk a lot about, you know, starting from scratch or coming in to ProStatus and having a look, a second set of eyes on what you have right now. Have you looked at plans where you go, oh my God, I can't believe this would even work? What was this guy thinking when he put this together? Has that happened to you?
You know, I'm sure it has. But over the years, I've seen so many plans come in the door. I'm sure it has come in, but really only one really comes to mind. So I've been here. I started my career years and years and years ago, back in 04, 05, when I was still in college, interning for Merrill Lynch all those years ago. And I was an intern, and then I became a service assistant. So I used to do a lot of the planning, putting stuff together for them. And then I left Merrill Lynch, and they were using, you know, Monte Carlo simulators, where it was basically a computer program rolling the dice to say, here's what retirement planning looks like for you. And then the advisor would choose from the myriad of products that Merrill Lynch offered. Here are the ones you can use for their clients, and then they'd enact it. And then I left Merrill Lynch. I moved back home to Maryland because that was down in South Carolina. I moved back home to Maryland. Went to work for T. Rowe Price. Started doing the same thing for T. Rowe Price. I was working on the advisory side for T. Rowe Price, and they were using their version of that Monte Carlo style software where it says, you know, if you put your money in the market and you have your money invested here, you have a, 90% chance of success if the stock market performs on average. If it's, over, the market performs above average, you're fine, and below average, it changes all the percentages, but it's basically the same thing. That Monte Carlo simulator where it's a computer program rolling the dice and saying, here's your probability of success. Then years ago, back in 08, I think, 07, 08, right before the crash that happened, I came over here to ProStatus, and we were using the same software, but Mike was always taking it a step further by showing people, here's exactly where the income's going to come from retirement. The Monte Carlo just tells us what's your probability, but how do we realistically make it happen? And I remember, it was probably 2010, 2011. We were doing our radio show, and we were doing it in a studio up in Reisterstown, right off of Loch Raven Boulevard, I believe, up 695 from our office. And we have an office over in Towson, and this gentleman called in the radio show, and he was interested in talking about retirement planning. He says, I've been working with this financial advisor for 2 years, and he gave me this retirement plan, and I'm not really sure it's the right thing for me because, we had just experienced the market crash of 07 and 08, and the stock market was rebounding. And so we came into the Towson office, and I want to say his name was Tom, but Tom lived up in the Folsom area. So we drove down to Towson. And I'm going over the retirement plan, and he's saying, this is, what my guy put together for me. And I believe it was Morgan Stanley at the time was who he was working with. And he was showing me everything. And I was looking at all the numbers, and I'm saying, this is a pretty aggressive plan for retirement. Did he talk to you about, your level of risk? And I said, yeah, I have been a pretty aggressive investor, but I want to dial back my risk in retirement. And I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm figuring out that this gentleman had said that he needed a 13% rate of return to make retirement work. And I'm like, okay.
Every year?
Every single year needed to be 13%. And I'm looking at these numbers and I say, how do you feel about this plan? He says, I don't really feel great about it because I just lost 30% of my money 2 years ago. Yes, it's starting to come back, but I'm still below from where we started with this guy. And I told him that I was thinking about, I wanted to be more and more conservative. And I just said, well, honestly, Tom, this plan doesn't work. The stock market has not averaged 13% per year every single year. There are no dividend paying positions out there that are going to pay you 13%. Reasonably speaking, this retirement plan isn't worth this fancy binder that he's put this thing in. And, it's not that I see that situation very often. And with Tom, we sat down, we went over everything. And I say, okay, you said you want to spend X amount of dollars per month, but realistically speaking, you can't do that. You have to go through your budget. You have to figure out where to cut because you don't have enough money to make this thing work. I can give you more realistic numbers, but he was 63 at the time when he came to me. I said, I can give you more realistic numbers for what you're working with, but the rate of which you're spending money, you are going to run out of money at age 82. And unless you're going to guarantee me that you're going to die at age 82, so that last check we write bounces, this is not a plan I want to put you in. It's not a plan I'm comfortable with. You need to go figure out your spending. And, it took some back and forth. And about a year, he finally came back to me and said, okay, Ryan, I'm ready to make this transition. I'm ready to do things. And we put a new plan in place for him with more realistic expectations. And he's been a client of mine now since, going on 15 years. And the plan's working great. And the money should outlive him at this point. But, I think that the reason that most people don't have a lot of faith in retirement plans like this thing is saying is because you go to these advisors, you go to Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, at Wells Fargo, Ed Jones, Ameriprise. I don't know if they're still a thing, but you go to one of these big box stores or most financial planners. You sit down with a financial planner. They ask you a handful of questions. You talk about risk. You talk about reasonable rates of return. You talk about, kind of what you want. And then you go back for a meeting or you sit down with them for the first time and they hand you this big, massive binder with 100 pages in it. And like I mentioned, years ago when I came aboard to Mike, that's what he was doing. We are putting all these plans, all this thought into this massive, massive binder and handing it to the clients. And the client's like, oh yeah, this is great. And they flipped through the first couple of pages of it. But you know what happened? They took that binder home. Mm-hmm. Maybe they opened it again, but more often than not, it went on the shelf and it was never opened again because it's just all this information and they don't have time to process it, to read through it, to understand. Here's exactly how my plan is going to work. And over the years, we've tweaked this planning process for us where, we will do that Monte Carlo simulation for everybody that comes in because everybody wants to see those numbers. What is my probability of success in retirement? But I use that as a jumping off point. It simply tells me, and when you come in, you sit down with myself or Lawrence or Faisal, any one of my advisors by calling us at 866-597-1040, 866-597-1040, or visiting us on the web at thesavvyinvestorradio.com. Click that button on top that says schedule my call. You'll come in, you'll sit down and say, okay, here's what the Monte Carlo thing tells me. It tells me, yes, we can make this work. It tells me here's a reasonable range of spending for me. It tells me here's what you're spending now and here's what your maximum number is. But how do we specifically make that work for you? And what I don't see in all the plans that come to me is detailed step-by-step of here's how things are going to work. And that's what we provide to our clients is, all right, here is year one of your retirement. Here's exactly the sources of income that you have. Here's where the other income coming in that you need. Here's how we're going to make it happen. Here's year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I show you all those years because once we get to 10, that's kind of where the income is now automatic and it's just kind of, it's happening at that point. But I'm showing you in a detailed step-by-step of here's exactly how retirement is going to work for you. And that really, I think, provides clients this sense of security. Just last week, we did our annual client Christmas party. We bring in all of our clients. We do this. We have a really beautiful office here in Hanover, right by BWI Airport. We host all of our clients. We had about 80 to 90 clients in the office. And I was sitting down talking with clients of mine, Rich and Linda. Linda was a school teacher. Rich worked for Northrop Grumman for a number of years. And they came and saw me years and years ago because they heard us on the radio. And they both just retired in July of this year. And Rich pulled me aside. You know, he's a very, very social person. He's talking to everybody, but he specifically sought me out and said, "Hey, Ryan, I want to talk to you. I want to say something to you. And I want it to be, you know, kind of in private." And he said, "You know, I can't believe that all of this planning that we did for all these years has finally come to fruition." And I was so nervous. No matter what you told me, I was so nervous about retiring. Linda was so nervous. We just really, you know, we had a lot of faith. We'd seen what you guys had done, but I was just nervous because it's finally my time. It's what we've been thinking about for years, is that we're finally going to stop working. And, you know, now that we've been retired for 5-6 months to this point, you know, I understand specifically where my money is coming from, because we have this plan that you gave us that's showing us specifically, here's where the income's going to come from for the first year. Here's the second. And I'm so glad that I took the time to pick up the phone and call you, because otherwise I'd be so lost. I don't think we'd be retired. I think we'd still be working. But I really just want to express my heartfelt gratitude to you and the team for everything that you do. And that really, to me, is why we do it, is giving our clients this added peace of mind of knowing that their retirement is safe and secure, that they're not going to outlive their money, that they understand their plan, that they're not overwhelmed with all this information. And, you know, I've loved giving Rich's name out for a number of years. Whenever people say, "Hey, can I talk to some of your clients to kind of see what their experience is?" I love giving his information out there because he's such a raving fan. They love engaging with us. They love doing some of the fun events. But, you know, to me, that's really why I'm in this business, is to give people the safety and that sense of security of knowing that their retirement is being looked after, that they don't have to worry about it. And, you know, for Rich and Linda, it all started by them giving us a call at 866-597-1040, 866-597-1040, and sitting down and going over a retirement plan that talks about the income, that talks about taxes, talks about the estate plan, all those aspects of a financial plan, all in one place. 866-597-1040, 866-597-1040, or, you know, visit us on the website at thesavvyinvestorradio.com. That's thesavvyinvestorradio.com. Right there at the top of the page is a button that says schedule my call without ever having to pick up the phone. Thesavvyinvestorradio.com.
You know, one of the things about this, and as Ryan has gone through that, is wondering to yourself, you know, what does my retirement plan look like? What is it based on? And is there anything missing? And we talk a lot about people who are starting from scratch and starting to build their retirement plan. But if you have something built right now and it's got that nice leather binder that he's talking about, and you look at that thing and you go, when's the last time I looked at that? And I wonder if that thing is still in effect. I wonder if that thing is going to work. Well, let's get a look at that and have Ryan and the team, you know, go over that thing like with a microscope and figuring out exactly what is going to work. And if there's some gaps there that need to be filled, let's figure that out right away. Again, thesavvyinvestorradio.com is the place to go. There's a place for you to click on there, and that kind of schedules basically a 15-minute phone call, no cost, no obligation there, to get to know you and find out what you're after and how we may be able to help. If you want to skip that, you can just call 866-597-1040. If you're listening on our podcast, make sure you like and subscribe, and that link to the Savvy Investor Radio is right there for you to click on as well. Again, 866-597-1040. That is all the time that we have on this segment. Ryan, I'll give you the last word on this one.
This is Ryan Herbert. Thank you so much for listening to the Savvy Investor Radio Show and podcast, and we will see you, the Savvy Investor, next week.
Advisory services offered through ProStatus Financial Advisors Group, a registered investment advisor. Insurance licensed in Maryland. ProStatus Financial Advisors Group, LLC is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if ProStatus Financial Advisors Group is licensed in your state, please call 410-863-1040. ProStatus Group, LLC is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through representatives of ProStatus Financial Advisors Group.